All right. So now we're going to talk about chapter 13 and 15. And really, again, the objectives for these chapters is just to get an overall picture of some of the mechanisms, strategies that microbes use for exit, entry, and transmission. As you will see in the homework, it will ask you to think about these and compare and contrast some methods. And again, those will be the similar kinds of questions you have on your exam. Okay, so the pathogen must get in to the host. We don't have actually a lot of pathogens that affect our skin, and we're going to talk about that in a minute because our skin is such a great defense mechanism unless it's broken or weakened. But as you're watching this, if you go ahead and take in a big deep breath through your mouth into your respiratory tract, you have just swallowed, maybe 10,000 pathogens, right? Whatever's floating in the air. Could be fungal, could be bacterial, could be viral, depending on who's around you, what kind of environment you're in. So very easy for pathogens to enter through our mouth, which is a direct shot to our respiratory tract. The other most common entry mechanism for pathogens is actually our eyes, the conjunctiva. Okay, and unfortunately, probably while you're watching this as I talk, you'll have this irrational need to itch your eyes, scratch your eyes, right? And that's where we get a lot of our colds from, is rubbing our eyes. Along with mouth, respiratory tract, if you breathe in, you might breathe in through your nose. You probably know that when you're sick, your nose and your ears and your throat, it's all connected. That's where you get all clogged up. There is entry and exit through your urogenital tract, through the anus, and a lot of this has to do with cleanliness and sexually transmitted diseases. And then again, you can break this nice barrier of your skin through scratches, injuries, bites, right? And those arthropods like to bite and take blood meal, and so that goes right to your blood system, and once pathogen's in your blood, then it's basically on the highway to all your other organs. Luckily, we have a lot of defense mechanisms. So we'll talk about your skin. Your skin is our first large organ barrier of defense. Some of the ways your skin is defensive is that it's, in general, acidic. So a pH of about 5.5. So lots of microbes don't find this a hospitable environment. It's also high in salt. High in salt. Right, so you sweat, get lots of salt there. We also produce something called AMPs, which are antimicrobial peptides. And these are small little, not even a protein, peptides. They're really small, I think 20 to 30 amino acids, something like that. And they actually act as detergents, and hopefully you know that detergents disrupt membranes. So they actually punch holes in cell membranes of bacteria. So that's a nice natural defense. We also secrete a lot of fatty acids through our sebaceous glands, right? So all that oil that comes on your face and makes you glow. We have natural flora. Right, so if you ever need to do microbiology experiment, someday you have kids at a science fair, you can just swipe different parts of your skin and grow lots of bacteria. We also shed our skin. Right? So you're constantly losing skin cells. And so unless a organism can stay here and penetrate through that skin layer, it's going to be shed off. That's why just simple hand washing, mechanically moving your hands back and forth, even without soap, is so good for preventing infections. We do have some weaknesses, and that's basically anywhere that the skin barrier is broken. So for instance, hair follicles. Let's try to spell this right. So that's an opening in your skin where pathogens can get in and potentially start replicating or get access to other places. Along with that, those sebaceous glands, those fat-producing, oil-producing glands, that's where you get your acne. Right? So organisms, some like that fatty acid environment, and so they grow there and they cause nice, lovely pimples. Okay. Again, if you have burns, wounds, right, scratches, abrasions, or bites from insects, or even needle puncture. Every time you break that nice layer of skin, you're potentially letting in pathogens. Okay, here's our eye, so please don't itch your eye. You have several defense mechanisms from your eye. So you have mechanical defense mechanisms, which is blinking. So it's actually very important to blink. It constantly is washing off that outside of your eye, pushing things out. You have chemical defense mechanisms, which are your tears. And your tears produce an enzyme called lysozyme, which is actually a very potent antibacterial. We used to do a lab where I taught general biology where we'd actually make people cry in the lab. It's kind of fun. And get their tears and put their tears on one of those antibacterial little discs, filter discs, and their lysozyme in their tears would act as an antibiotic. And so we could measure who had the strongest tears. It was pretty cool. So lysozyme damages bacterial cell walls, so it prevents those infections. The biggest weakness is that we're always touching our eyes. Right? Rubbing our eyes, itching our eyes, scratching our eyes, touching our eyes, because our eyes get itchy, right? When you have allergies, my eyes kind of get swollen and then I can't stop rubbing them and keep going, you're potentially infecting, but anyways, that's a hard thing not to do. Your oropharynx is basically your mouth, kind of down your throat area there, your nasal cavity. Okay? These are all areas that pathogens can get in. Don't forget our teeth. Right now I want you to rub your tongue across your teeth and you'll feel that nice biofilm of bacteria that's growing there, right? So we have lots of defense mechanisms. Here we have saliva. So saliva has some mechanical defense mechanisms, which is flushing, right? So every time you swallow, You're taking microorganisms that are in your mouth and moving them basically into your stomach, right, where a lot of the acid can digest. Okay, when you get really runny noses, you might make some nasty sounds, and right, and you get this big mucus going down your throat. But it's good because that's headed to your gut, your stomach, that's got lots of acids and a defense mechanism there. You also have your normal flora in your mouth and nose. Right, and we talked about this on Monday. So your teeth have some good bacteria there. We can mechanically get rid of some of that bacteria with brushing our teeth. You've got normal flora in your nasal cavity and other places in your mouth. And remember, the advantage of normal flora is it helps to outcompete some of the potential pathogens. Okay. So our weakness in the oropharynx region is when we don't brush, you can grow this nice biofilm on your teeth. Teeth. Right, and we talked about biofilms previously, how they're this nice community and they become very resistant to antibiotics by having these barriers that protect them. So you really want to brush your teeth. It is amazing how the relationship with poor oral hygiene and other diseases. So most of us take for granted brushing our teeth, but a lot of people aren't brought up to understand how important that is. The other weakness is when you don't eat. So the time, I'm trying to write on this here, the time between meals. Okay. So you actually get dehydrated a bit, and as you dry out a little bit, you're allowing bacteria to start attaching and multiplying. So we swallow less. We are not flushing out that system as much when we don't eat. So in addition to being good for hydration, drinking water, keep rinsing that mouth out is a great preventative measure. Keeping that saliva flowing will help keep your, especially your mouth, pathogen free. All right, respiratory tract. Right? We've talked a little bit about the upper respiratory tract. The lower respiratory tract, we talked about that the lungs are pretty sterile. They don't have a lot of microbes naturally in there. The biggest defense of this system is mucus, sometimes better known as snot, right? So this mucus is produced to clog up and trap those pathogens that have entered your respiratory tract. And then a lot of times you'll cough or you'll sneeze. And these are actually natural reactions that your body says, there's something foreign in here, I want to get it out, right? So don't suppress those sneezes. Go ahead and sneeze. Just cover your face so you're not transmitting whatever you've got. We also have, along with this, we have our ciliary, can I spell this? Ciliary action. So the cells that line your trachea, right? Trachea goes to the, trachea have these little cilia that help sweep microbes out, right? So that makes you cough. And when people smoke a lot, or if you get Bacillus pertussis, which is whooping cough, you have a hard time coughing because you've damaged these little cilia, and so they can't push things back out. In your lungs, you do have macrophages, which next week we will start talking about the immune system. And macrophages are great at kind of scanning and monitoring and eating, phagocytosis, eating foreign objects, so eating pathogens. Unfortunately, a pathogen like tuberculosis, which infects your lungs, actually can hide out in macrophages. So it uses our natural defense to as a host. All right, a couple more places. Your gastrointestinal tract. Okay. You have both mechanical and chemical defenses, right? So you've got mucus, you make bile. Bile is not only important for your digestion, but it actually attacks bacterial membranes as well. You have acid in your stomach. You've got mechanically this movement or flow of material, right? So things don't always have a long time to attach and hang on and replicate. So you're constantly moving things. And we do have other mechanical defenses, especially when we're sick, such as diarrhea and vomiting, right? It's a great way to expel microorganisms in our GI tract. And remember that here we have lots of natural flora. So we've got lots of good microbes in there that are keeping out the bad. There is a recent study that's saying that they think maybe certain gut bacteria that are really good for us are hanging out in the appendix. So people are always looking for, why do we still have that appendix? Our urogenital tract is another site of entry, but we do have some defense mechanisms. So females, the vagina is very acidic. So that prevents a lot of bacteria from growing. Vagina also produces mucus, which can trap pathogens, and it also has a natural flora, which is really what keeps it acidic, that again helps outcompete pathogens could enter. The males, the biggest defense mechanism males have from getting urogenital tract infections or UTIs is that they have a large distance between the urethra and the anus. Between urethra and anus. Okay, so that means that as you're excreting all of that fecal matter that is full of bacteria, for men, they don't have much of a chance of contaminating. For women, that's our biggest weakness, right? So the anus is very close to the urethra opening, and so women have to be careful not to cross-contaminate themselves. The biggest weakness for men is not getting circumcised. Okay. So if you don't get this extra skin, isn't this bad? I don't even know where it all is exactly. Somewhere around here. Sorry, I don't know my anatomy. If you don't get the extra skin removed, it's a lovely hiding place for microbes to hang out. It's warm and it's moist, and so they see an increase, especially with sexually transmitted diseases, from men that are not circumcised. Oh, I should say our other general defense mechanism for our urogenital tract is your bladder that makes urine, right? So you have this mechanical flow, again, of liquid that can wash out. So we used to do a lot of fun things in micro. I don't know if you guys get to do it here, but we used to be able to take urine specimens and grow them up. And so especially for women, they would always say do a clean catch. So get rid of the skin bacteria. Remember, the bladder's supposed to be sterile, and that flow of urine, if you are contaminated, will grow up lots of colonies on your plate. One of my first years teaching microbiology, I had a student whose plate was full of bacteria, and so she showed me and asked me if she had a urinary tract infection, and I said, I'm not that kind of doctor. So go see your doctor. I don't know if they allow us to do that stuff anymore. All right. I have one more entry, and then I will stop this video and I will make you a new one. So another way that microbes can get into an organism is from mother to fetus, through the placenta. And I'm not going to go through all this. It's on the bottom of your notes, but it used to be this nice acronym called TORCH, which explained the types of viruses and protozoa and microbes that could actually get from the mother's blood to the fetus by crossing that placental barrier. Not all microbes can do that. We're not even actually sure how all of them can do that. But take a look at the notes on this slide for some of those organisms. You know that Zika is a huge one that people are looking at right now because of the fetal development damage it causes. Not only through the placenta, but also through the birthing process. Mothers can transmit pathogens to their newborn child. And we're going to talk a little bit about this transmission again a few slides from now. Oh, actually, I have two more entry slides I will finish up with. Attachment. Okay, so some microorganisms actually have specific receptors that allow them to get. So they might be in your respiratory tract, but how do they get deeper? And so the two terms I want you to understand is that viruses use host cell receptors. So they use proteins on your cell membranes that are normally used for other cell communication, and they attach and they can get inside your cell where they replicate. For some bacteria, it's pili, right? So remember the bacteria, some have those little pili, and those help it attach, and then it can colonize, for instance, here on your intestinal tract. And one other method of entry is what we call invasion. And so some bacteria, primarily, some protozoa, like the one that causes malaria, can actually live inside your cells. So I gave you the example of tuberculosis. Rickettsia does that. Like I said, malaria lives inside your red blood cells. So sometimes the pathogen can trick your cells into taking it inside. Here's some E. coli inside a cell, and they hide away from the immune response. So they find a nice little niche that they can grow and divide. All right, so when we come back, we will talk about exit and transmission.